Are we still capable of thinking for ourselves, or have we outsourced our minds to the noise? We live in an era where silence feels like a threat, where every second must be filled with stimuli, sounds, images, and information. Yet, the more we feed this insatiable hunger for distraction, the emptier we become inside. This video is an invitation to reflect on the age of distraction, a time when we have never been so informed, yet paradoxically we have never thought so little. We'll explore how modern society is dulling our minds under a flood of stimuli, and what this means for our identity, our freedom, and our future. But perhaps the most frightening part isn't what distraction is taking from us, but what it's building in our place. We live like flies circling a lamp. Drawn to the light, unable to resist its lure, we spiral endlessly until our wings burn out. The modern world has become that lamp, an endless explosion of stimuli that seduces us, consumes us, and slowly destroys us. In the 19th century, Nietzsche wrote that the depth of human thought was being sacrificed for speed and surface. He called modernity an era of journalists, not just reporters but minds turned into a succession of quick news, shallow opinions, fragments of ideas without roots. What he saw in his time was merely the seed of what our world has become, the death of deep thinking. Today this death is no longer just philosophical. It's biological. With every notification, every buzz of the phone, every endless feed, our brains adapt to crave more fragments, more pieces, more crumbs. We no longer have the patience to contemplate. Pause has become a burden. Think about how we react in a grocery line, on a bus, or waiting for someone in a cafe. Silence lasts only a few seconds before our hands, almost instinctively, reach for the phone. Even brief solitude feels unbearable. We no longer know how to inhabit emptiness. But this inability to endure pause isn't some harmless quirk. It's a mutation of the mind. Every time we flee from silence, we lose the chance to dive into ourselves. Every time we surrender to noise, we forfeit authentic thought. And here lies the contradiction. We have never had access to so much information, yet we have never been so impoverished in wisdom. We know in real time what's happening on the other side of the planet, yet we cannot discern what's happening within us. We consume data in abundance, but we lack understanding. Nietzsche once said, "Most men do not seek truth, but only the confirmation of their beliefs." In today's world, this statement feels even harsher. We do not seek truth, we do not seek depth, we seek distraction. We crave stimuli that keep us busy enough to avoid noticing the void silently growing inside. This dictatorship of stimulation doesn't impose itself through force, but through seduction. It's not a tyrant demanding obedience, it's a lover offering quick pleasure. And the more we accept, the weaker our own ability to resist becomes. Ask yourself, when was the last time you spent an entire hour in complete silence, without music, without a phone, without a screen, just with yourself? For many the answer is frightening. And it shows how deeply trapped we already are. Distraction is the most accepted drug of our era. Unlike alcohol, nicotine, or any chemical narcotic, it is not condemned, it is celebrated. Entire industries profit from engineering our attention, turning every scattered second into capital. The notifications buzzing in your pocket aren't accidents. They are traps. And we, like flies circling the lamp, cannot resist the lure of the light. But if this is true, what does it mean for our lives today? If stimulation has become an invisible prison, what are we losing when we repeatedly choose distraction? We live surrounded by cheap dopamine. Every notification, every like, every new image scrolling before our eyes is not just a piece of information. It's a small chemical jolt tricking the brain into believing we found something valuable. But we haven't. What we found is anesthesia. Doctor and thinker Gabor Mate writes that addictions are born not just from pleasure, but from pain. We become dependent on something when it offers relief for a wound we don't know how to face. Applied to the modern world, the equation becomes clear. Distraction has become our collective anesthetic against existential emptiness. We scroll through feeds as if taking sips of forgetfulness. We binge-watch series as if refusing to face our own solitude. We overwork, not just out of ambition, but because the silence of rest threatens to confront us with the question we avoid: what is all of this for? And the more we flee from that question, the more society adapts to keep us running. Superficiality has become a product, a commodity, a way of life. We live in an attention economy but also in a psychology of distraction. The human mind was not designed to handle infinite fragments. Our memory, our attention, our consciousness, all of us crave meaning, continuity, coherence. Yet instead we are fed broken, scattered stimuli, shallow and fleeting. The result is a mind that is both saturated and starving, full of information, empty of significance. Nietzsche said, "The modern man is rich in information but poor in wisdom." Today that phrase feels almost like an epitaph for our era. We are specialists in everything, masters of nothing. We know headlines about politics, celebrity gossip, quick opinions on philosophy, but we lack the patience to follow an idea to its depths. This superficiality is not neutral. It erodes our capacity to feel. Think about how we react to tragedy. Earthquakes, wars, famine, all appear on our screens only to vanish in seconds, drowned out by funny videos, ads, more news. The pain of others becomes spectacle and then noise. We don't cry. We don't reflect. We just keep scrolling. What does this mean? It means we no longer seek meaning, we seek numbness. We live to avoid feeling too much, thinking too much, stopping too much. The psychology of superficiality is, at its core, a psychology of escape. We flee from silence because in it we hear ourselves. We flee from depth because in it we confront anguish. We flee from lucidity because it reveals that life, as Camus would say, might be too absurd to endure without distractions. And here lies the paradox. The more we flee, the more dependent we become. Distraction, which began as an escape, becomes a prison. The anesthetic, which began as relief, becomes addiction. We are trapped in a wheel that spins on its own. The more we distract ourselves, the less we know how to be present. The less we know how to be present, the more we need distraction. What was once choice has become reflex. We no longer pick up the phone because we decide to, we pick it up because we cannot not pick it up. We no longer watch the next episode because we want to, we watch it because we fear what we'll find in its absence. And in this process, the deep human being, capable of contemplation, of silence, of truth, is slowly being dumbed down. Not for lack of intelligence but for excessive escape. But if distraction has become collective anesthesia, what happens when a lucid mind refuses to anesthetize itself? Guy Debord, in The Society of the Spectacle, wrote that in modernity, all that was directly lived has moved away into representation. What he meant is simple and devastating. We no longer live to live, we live to show. We no longer seek experiences for what they are, but for what they appear to be when transformed into image, performance, content. Zygmunt Bauman called this same phenomenon liquid modernity. Everything is ephemeral, transient, dissolved in moments. Relationships, identities, even thoughts. Life is no longer something solid to be built. It is a spectacle in constant motion, always ready to be consumed and discarded. And in this spectacle, banality reigns. Conversations revolve around gossip, fleeting scandals, disposable memes. The silence that could spark reflection is filled with noise that generates only forgetfulness. We turn human drama into trending topics, pain into statistics, intimacy into selfies. Society is no longer made of citizens but of spectators. Spectators of their own lives, spectators of others' lives, spectators of an endless show in which everyone pretends to live more than they actually do. But there is something even more corrosive. In this theater of banality, depth becomes alien. To speak of death, silence, solitude, philosophy, spirituality without dogma, all of this feels out of place, almost like heresy amid the carnival of entertainment. We live surrounded by people who have an opinion on everything, yet tremble under the weight of a genuine conversation. And this is where the tragedy of the lucid mind is born. The more you perceive banality, the less able you are to participate in it. The deeper your gaze becomes, the less tolerable the spectacle. Think of a noisy party. Everyone drinks, laughs, dances, shouts, takes photos, performs joy. But you, in silence, observe. Suddenly, everything feels strange. Smiles seem forced, conversations seem empty, gestures seem mechanical. And you ask yourself, is this life? Is this what everyone calls happiness? This is the dilemma of consciousness in a dumbed-down society. The more awake you are, the harder it is to fit in. Nietzsche said, "True solitude is not being alone, but being surrounded by people who do not share your truth." In the age of distraction, this feeling intensifies. We live in a world where everyone is connected, yet almost no one truly meets. Where everyone talks, yet almost no one listens. Where everyone shows, yet almost no one is. And if this is true, an inevitable question arises. What happens to a mind that refuses to dance in this spectacle of banality? Arthur Schopenhauer said, The more intelligent the individual, the more he tends towards solitude. Not because he rejects others, but because the superficiality of the many becomes unbearable to those who see deeply. In the age of distraction, this chasm has only widened. The deep mind suffers because it lives out of sync with the rhythm of the world. While everyone chases quick stimuli, it longs for silence. While everyone celebrates noise, it yearns for contemplation. While everyone seeks the lightness of distraction, it bears the weight of lucidity. Kierkegaard described this condition as existential anguish, the vertigo of realizing oneself free, yet also responsible for the weight of one's own existence. In a society dumbed down by distraction, this anguish is not shared. Those who dare to feel it are seen as strange, inadequate, out of place. What was once a virtue, thinking, reflecting, questioning, is now almost a social flaw. To be deep is to be too complicated. To seek silence is to be weird. To refuse the spectacle of banality is to be antisocial. And so, the lucid mind is pushed to the margins. It finds no resonance, no refuge. Its suffering arises from solitude but also from consciousness. Because the more you see the machinery, the harder it is to pretend it doesn't exist. There is a recurring scene in the lives of those who think too much. The moment when, amid a crowd, they feel completely alone. They are surrounded by voices, yet hear none that truly reach them. They are surrounded by faces, yet none seems to truly see. It's as if they are speaking a foreign language in the middle of their own home. And here the cruelest contradiction reveals itself. Silence, which could have been a refuge, has become an enemy. We have lost the ability to be with ourselves. And when someone tries to inhabit silence, they discover it is populated by truths that distraction has always tried to hide. Silence confronts us with the question we avoid: who are we when no one is looking? And this confrontation can be unbearable. That is why so many prefer to flee back to the noise, to the screen, to the endless chase of stimuli. But fleeing comes at a cost. Every time we run from silence, we forfeit the chance to build the courage to face it. And so, the deep mind becomes increasingly rare, increasingly isolated, increasingly misunderstood. Perhaps this is the true collapse of our society, not just the loss of attention but the persecution of silence. Not just the intoxication of stimuli, but the inability to bear the weight of lucidity. And if silence has become unbearable, it means the truth it holds is more terrifying than we imagined. Albert Camus wrote that the fundamental philosophical question is suicide, the capacity of man to endure or not, the absurdity of existence. But in the age of distraction, we no longer need to confront the absurd. We have invented a more convenient escape: alienation. In the past, religions offered meaning, structure, and narrative. Today, in much of the West, it is no longer the sacred that organizes life, but the banal. Worship no longer happens in temples, it happens on screens. We no longer pray in silence. We refresh timelines in search of new idols, new revelations, new invisible commandments that dictate how we should think, dress, desire, hate, love. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han describes our time as an era of fatigue and self-exploitation. We are no longer exploited only by the system but by ourselves, by the need to perform, to show, to produce incessantly. And in this process, we have become devotees of a silent altar, the altar of distraction. Alienation has ceased to be the exception and become the rule. We don't notice it, but we spend more time immersed in virtual worlds than in direct contact with the real. Our relationships, our desires, our very identity are shaped by the logic of distraction. And the more this repeats, the further we drift from who we truly are. Consider the dynamics of social media. You don't show who you are, you show who the algorithm rewards. You don't think about what you believe, you think about what goes viral. You don't share what you feel, you share what drives engagement. In this way, alienation is not just escape, it is fabrication. We create versions of ourselves that do not exist, and we become loyal to these masks. Nietzsche warned, "When you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." Today, that abyss is the screen, infinite, bright, seductive. And the reflection it returns is not our face but a caricature of it. Alienation has become our new religion because it gives us what we have always sought: a community even if superficial, a purpose even if empty, a liturgy even if banal, and above all, an escape from confronting existential silence. The philosopher and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl said that human beings can endure any pain as long as they find meaning. But if we no longer seek meaning, only distraction, perhaps what we are doing is replacing the weight of existence with the lightness of alienation. A fragile, illusory lightness that can crumble at any moment. And this brings us to an inevitable question. If distraction has become our faith, where is salvation? Simone Weil wrote, "Attention, absolutely pure and unmingled, is prayer." She wasn't speaking of institutional religion, but of something more radical: the ability to look at something or someone with total presence, without escape, without distraction. In the age of distraction, this ability has become a form of resistance. Viktor Frankl, in his accounts from the concentration camps, showed that even in the midst of the most brutal suffering, a human being can still choose the stance they take toward life. And perhaps this is the key to escaping the collapse of distraction: reclaiming choice. The choice of where we place our attention, where we invest our energy, how we inhabit silence. Attention is a political act. It is also a spiritual act, even without dogma. It is an active refusal to surrender to the spectacle of banality. When you read a book without distraction, when you contemplate a landscape in silence, when you truly listen to someone, when you write your thoughts without thinking about posting them, you are rebelling against a system that thrives on stealing your mind. Of course, this is not easy. Everything around you is designed to hijack your attention. But perhaps what is at stake is greater than we think. The very capacity to be human in a world that insists on reducing us to consumers of stimuli. Reclaiming attention doesn't happen all at once. It begins with small gestures: turning off notifications, walking without headphones, enduring a few minutes of silence without reaching for a screen. These are minimal acts that, repeated, build something rare: depth. And this depth is the antidote to mental dulling. It does not promise constant happiness, but it offers something far more valuable: the possibility to think for oneself, to feel authentically, to live in a way that is not merely performance. Deep down, perhaps the question isn't whether society has grown dull. The real question is, will you have the courage not to become part of it? We return to the initial question: are we still capable of thinking for ourselves, or have we outsourced our minds to the noise? Perhaps the answer doesn't lie in some grand revolutionary gesture, but in something quieter: learning to protect our attention as our most precious possession. Because in the end, in an age of distraction, the true revolution is learning to inhabit silence. And it is in this silence, so feared, so avoided, so dismissed, that perhaps life will finally return us to ourselves. If you question the world as I do, join me. This channel is for those who refuse easy answers. Subscribe and await the next video.